The eyes of multiple goblins gleam in the dark. They're running through a forest when a young man suddenly drops from the sky and kicks a goblin in the face. He wields a stick to hit, strangle, and defeat each of the goblins. He sits down amidst their corpses and smiles. In the beginning, Yotsuya Yusuke is just a young, normal high school boy. At school, their advisor does the roll call while his classmates gossip about each other. One of his classmates, Hakozaki Kusue, is absent again due to illness. After class, he leaves the building when he overhears a couple of guys talking about another classmate of theirs, Shindo Iu. She's a popular athletic student who was recently just scouted as a model. Yotsuya ignores all the other students and continues walking. At home, he just plays video games the whole night. The next school day, Yotsuya is erasing the blackboard when he notices Shindo in class. Last night he checked her out and saw that she is indeed a model. To his surprise, Shindo is talking to Kusue. He didn't know that those two were close. He then gets surprised when the two girls glance at him. After class, their advisor scolds him since he hasn't submitted his future plans form yet. He's surprised yet again when he notices that the two girls are still inside the classroom watching him. When the teacher leaves, he goes back to erasing the blackboard. He's about to tell the girls that he was supposed to lock up when he notices that they are already gone. Some strange things start happening around Yotsuya when he suddenly gets teleported and finds himself falling from the sky. Thankfully, he lands in water, but when he looks around, he's not in Japan anymore. He swims away from the mysterious creatures in the water when he notices Shindo and Kusue call out to him. He meets them on the shore, and they quickly warn him about a weirdo about to show up. But before he can understand what they're saying, a white mannequin with half a head starts talking to him. He starts freaking out, but the mannequin just starts his explanation. The mannequin is the game master, and he gives them their quest to fulfill the village chief's request within 14 days. Yotsuya tries to interrupt him to ask a question, but Shindo just kicks him from behind. To his surprise, it didn't hurt. The mannequin then continues to explain that there are still 8 steps left to complete their mission. Upon completion of each step, a new member will join their party until they complete the last steps with 10 members. He then introduces his companions, Shindo, the Wind Wizard, and Kusue, the Warrior. For Yotsuya, the Game Master spins a wheel to determine his occupation, and it lands on one of the smallest sections, a farmer. The Game Master then disappears, and they are back on the shore, with Yotsuya now wearing the garb of a farmer. Later, Shindo explains that she was brought there without warning alone. After she completed the first quest, she returned to their world. She then spoke with Kusue and asked her to be her friend, just as the Game Master instructed. After they completed the next quest, he instructed them to bring Yotsuya next. Yotsuya accepts his new reality because, back on the shore, Shindo taught him how to access his weapon menu, and he was able to manifest his weapons, a hoe and a sickle. While walking through a forest, Yotsuya notices a magical circle in the ground, and Shindo explains that it's a log point, where scenes from the past are stored. Yotsuya touches the log point, and he witnesses Shindo consoling Kusue on her first day there. They then notice 2 goblins in the forest, and Yotsuya quickly charges in with his sickle. Unfortunately, the goblin just breaks his sickle. Shindo uses her wind magic, but it just blows a breeze on the goblin's face. Meanwhile, Kusue is scared of the goblins and accidentally throws her sword at them. Yotsuya tries to pick the sword, but he can't seem to touch it. Only users assigned to the weapons can pick them up. Yotsuya uses his hoe to attack, but it just breaks again, and the goblins hit him in the face, killing him. He then finds himself looking down on his own body and watches as Kusue also dies. He wakes back up, and Shindo explains that they revive after 30 seconds. Since he won't die anyway, Yotsuya asks for Shindo's help and attacks the goblin again. Shindo creates a cloud of dust, and Yotsuya stabs the goblin with the handle of his hoe, killing it, but also dying from the goblin's attack. After they revive, Yotsuya asks the girls how they managed to finish the 2 quests before. It turns out that the first 2 quests were pretty easy, as long as they don't both die. Because if they all die, they die for real. That night, the girls continue explaining the game to Yotsuya, including the map, and how you can ask the Game Master a question as a reward for finishing the quests. Shindo asked him why she was chosen, but the Game Master just replied that someone she knows requested it. Kusue meanwhile asked who they were, and the game master told them they were from the future. Later, Yotsuya is patrolling around their camp when he hears the girls shouting. He runs back to them but finds their camp ablaze and Kusue's mangled body on the ground. A large creature was in the distance with Shindo in its grasp. Shindo yells at them to run away, and the beast casually bites her head off. Yotsuya picks up Kusue's body and flees. The next morning, Kusue is now alive, but her hand didn't regenerate. She hypothesizes that it may be because it was eaten. That means Shindo probably won't revive either. Thus, they have no choice but to complete the quest on their own. When they reach a village, the citizens warmly welcome them as heroes. The village chief then gives them their quest to slay the monster called a troll in the countryside. To their horror, it was the creature they just encountered last night. Yotsuya is devastated upon learning this. Kusue has never even beaten a goblin before, so what chance do they have against the troll? Yotsuya decides that Kusue is just useless and tells her to stay in the village while he goes out to raise his rank. Kusue tells him that she wants to save Shindo too, but Yotsuya replies that currently she's just baggage for him. He then walks away with a smile on his face, since this place is clearly more exciting than his previous life. Before they were attacked by the troll, Shindo, Kusue, and Yotsuya were talking about what plans they have for the future. Yotsuya still hasn't submitted his future plans form, while Shindo and Kusue plan to go to the same high school. Not only that, Kusue also plans to go to the pharmaceutical university. Back in the present, Yotsuya is remembering how easily the troll ate Shindo and realizes that he needs to level up to have a fighting chance. While looking for some goblins to fight, he notices a log point in the ground. Upon touching it, he watches as Shindo and Kusue were gossiping about having a future boy comrade. Kusue shares that he hates all boys, while Shindo shares that she hopes it is Yotsuya. There are two Yotsuya in their class, so Yotsuya eagerly hopes that she was talking about him, but he sneezes at the precise moment she clarifies who, so he didn't learn who she was talking about. He then finds some goblins and proceeds to defeat them one by one. While battling, he can't help but remember his childhood days, when he was playing with his friends in the forest. However, it just fills him up with rage. One of the goblins escaped, but Yotsuya was able to reach rank 9 farmer. He hopes that there's a way to change his job so he can use something like a sword. While looking at his status screen, he notices that Kusue died. He hurriedly runs back to the village and sees it burning. To his bewilderment, Kusue didn't revive after 30 seconds, meaning that the troll ate her. In the destroyed village, he sees a log point and touches it to learn what happened. He watches as Kusue practices swinging her sword, because she doesn't want to be a burden anymore. She was so sickly in the real world that she was a burden to her parents, and she wants to change it here. Yotsuya realizes that ever since coming here, he was only thinking about himself, not his teammates or anyone else. When the troll attacked, Kusue stayed behind to keep it busy while the villagers escaped. She was easily beaten, but she still distracted the troll when a kid was in danger. The troll then picked her up and ate her, with her last words asking Yotsuya for help. Back in the present, the troll spots Yotsuya and he runs for his life. However, the troll jumps right behind him and swats him into the sky. As he was contemplating his death, Yotsuya suddenly realized that after graduating from elementary, he never cared anymore. And yet, a girl who is so sickly wants to do a pharmaceutical research in the future? Yotsuya realizes he cannot let his teammates die. He crashes down onto the ground and starts running into the forest. In the past, he saved his friends from a rabid dog, so he just has to do it again this time. After a while, he learns that he can dodge the troll if he changes direction the moment it jumps. He continues dodging, but after a while, he makes a mistake. The troll is about to kill him when he notices a goblin in front of him. He immediately stabs the goblin and hopes that he levels up. Thankfully, he did, and the world freezes around him. The game master then appears and congratulates him for achieving rank 10. As a reward, he will get a new job. The game master spins the circle, and it lands in the chef profession. Yotsuya gets dismayed, but he suddenly realizes that he now has kitchen knives on his weapons list. Not only that, he has a skill that allows him to see the organs of creatures. As time resumes, he immediately dashes forward and slashes the troll's stomach, letting Kusue and Shindo escape and revive. He teaches the others the troll's attack pattern and they all fight the troll. Unfortunately, its defenses are too high, and they just keep dying. After a while, Yotsuya notices the wound on his stomach and creates a plan. He shares his plan with the girls and immediately dashes forward, crawling inside its wound and stabbing it from the inside. The troll pulls him out and kills him. Next, Shindo charges into the troll and points her staff at its wound. And just like Yotsuya instructed, she blasted wind magic inside, making the troll pop like a balloon. The Game Master congratulates them for defeating the troll. The girls notice that they level up, but to their annoyance, Yotsuya leveled up faster than them. As his reward for finishing the quest, the Game Master lets Yotsuya ask one question. Yotsuya remembers the others' questions, and he decides to ask what happens after they finish the 10 stages. In response, the Game Master shows them a vision of the future. It was them in their fantasy garb, but a magic circle opens in Tokyo and a gigantic dragon emerges. The three then find themselves back in their classroom at the same time when they left. Shindo gets up and thanks Yotsuya for letting her live long enough for her tennis tournament. She then tells Yotsuya to walk Kusue home and leaves. Yotsuya walks Kusue home, but it's his first time walking with a girl, so he's awkward. In his nervousness, he talks a lot. In the middle of the city, he remembers the vision they saw, and he realizes that if he abandons their quests, then there's a chance that his city he hates could be destroyed. Before they completed the quest, Yotsuya found another log point after defeating a couple of goblins. After touching it, he sees Kusue and Shindo before he became a member of their group. They have just killed their first goblin when Shindo suddenly hugged Kusue tight and thanked her for being her friend with tears in her eyes. Back in the present, Kusue texts Shindo about how her walk with Yotsuya went. Shindo asks a friend of hers, who was a former classmate of Yotsuya, how he was back in elementary school, but the girl tells her he was just a quiet kid. Meanwhile, Yotsuya is jogging in the streets when he receives a call from the Game Master. The Game Master instructs him to go to a specific school and flirt with a girl there. Following the instructions, he enters a bathroom and sees 3 girls in the process of taking off his target girl's clothes. Yotsuya breaks the girls' phones and chases them out of the bathroom. He then walks the girl home. He asks the girl why they were bullying her, and she explains that they were just getting revenge since she badmouthed them online. The girl then advises Yotsuya to play some romance games and runs away. 2 weeks later, they get teleported back to the game. The new girl is freaking out when the Game Master arrives and gives the new girl, Tokitate Yuka, the job of a fire wizard. As for their quest, they need to traverse 5% of the map and deliver the goods to Radodorbo in 40 days. Not only that, their revival counter was increased to 40 seconds. After the Game Master leaves, Yotsuya tries to introduce himself to Yuka, but she just labels him as a pervert stalker. Yuka explains to Shindo and Kusue how she and Yotsuya met, and the other 2 girls judge Yotsuya. They walk away, ignoring Yotsuya, who is trying to explain himself. Shindo explains to Yuka the mechanics of the game and tells her that she should relax around them. Yuka, meanwhile, sees her as a Majiha Purple, the lively protagonist in the anime she likes watching. Shindo then asks Yuka about her bullying, and Yuka explains that she's friends again with the people who bullied her. She complained about Yotsuya to them, making him their common enemy and getting back onto their good sides. She explains to Shindo that she survives through high school by just not giving away for others to bully her. Meanwhile, Shindo tells her that she doesn't really get bullied herself because she puts a lot of effort into everything: academics, athletics, and even making friends. Still, she stops any bullying she sees because it seems dumb to her. Yuka gets amazed at Shindo's character and kneels before her. They finally exit the forest when something large suddenly falls from the sky behind Yotsuya. It was a giant bug corpse. Before they can comprehend what happened, a gigantic centipede suddenly bursts out of the bug's corpse. The centipede swings its tail around and whips it toward them, throwing a spherical item at them in the process. They all scatter, and Yotsuya wonders what kind of sphere the centipede threw at them. The ball suddenly opens up, revealing that it's actually a pill bug and hits Yotsuya directly in the face, killing him instantly. Yotsuya wonders where such a strong enemy came from, and he uses his chef skill to identify the threat level and name of the enemy. He watches as another pill bug hits and kills Shindo, and learns that the enemy is called a demon bug Cadmolet. and the Pillbug and Centipede have a combined threat level of D-. Yuka bravely faces the Centipede and declares that she'll handle the enemy. It has always been her dream to be a magical girl, just like her idols, Majiha Pink and Majiha Purple. Ever since kindergarten, she had fanatically watched that show and even roleplayed as a magic user. Now that her wish has come true, she points her staff at the enemy and chants her spell. Her mana quickly drains, but to her surprise, nothing happens except that her staff starts glowing. She touches it, and true to her name as a fire wizard, it increased its temperature by 20 degrees Celsius. A Pillbug then hits her in the face and kills her. Yotsuya already expected it since Yuka is just rank 1 mage. Another Pillbug is hurtling at Kusue, who was hiding behind a tree, but Yotsuya definitely catches the projectile and kills it with a kitchen knife. The Centipede roars out loud and sends another Pillbug at them, but he deflects and kills it too. The girls are amazed at his prowess, and Yuka even compares him to her anime crush. Meanwhile, Yotsuya tells the others to stay back as he dodges the Centipede's attacks. He notices that the Centipede doesn't have any venom or spines along its body, so he quickly charges in and holds onto its body at the Centipede's blind spot. He then takes out his kitchen knife and slices off all the Centipede's legs. Now that the Centipede cannot move anymore, they only need to kill it. Thankfully, Yotsuya has another idea. He asks Kusue if he can hold her longsword through her hand. Yuka gets confused about what they're talking about, so Shindo demonstrates to her that the other players cannot use weapons not assigned to them. Yotsuya's idea worked, and together with Kusue, they swung the sword downward at the Centipede's body, killing it and allowing Kusue and Yotsuya to rank up. In a flashback, a crying child is telling her mother that Shindo hit him. Shindo runs away from the park and heads toward the river. She is staring at the river when a high school girl stops by and asks her what's wrong. After telling her what happened, the high schooler advises her to not be violent because she might lose all her friends. Shindo replies she doesn't need any friends, but the high schooler just offered to be her friend instead. The high schooler introduces herself as Sayuri, and Shindo happily walks with her. A few months later, Shindo overhears her parents talking about Sayuri's death. They are thankful that, unlike Sayuri, their daughter is gorgeous. The next day, upon going to Sayuri's funeral, the sight of Sayuri in her coffin leaves a lasting memory in Shindo's mind. Shindo wakes up from her nightmare and sees Yotsuya exercising nearby. Yotsuya notices Shindo's sad expression, which is very different from her usual cheery self. He asks her what's wrong, and Shindo suddenly grabs his hand and asks for his help. Shindo tells the story of her friendship with Sayuri to Yotsuya. In the past, she was known as the local bad kid. After meeting the older girl, Sayuri, her life changed. But one day, Sayuri jumped off her building after getting bullied and died. She then heard her parents talking about how Sayuri's ugliness caused her bullying. Then, when she started elementary school, Shindo herself was bullied. Teachers were mean to her because of her parents, but her friends always defended her. From that moment on, she realizes that her friends are her strength, and she will do everything she can to prevent what happened to Sayuri from happening to her. But when she got transported by the game master, everything she had worked for vanished. Her friends are gone, and she's all alone. That is why she doesn't want to die in this gaming world. Shindo holds Yotsuya's hands again and asks for his strength to help her clear their quests. Yotsuya nervously accepts her request while the others are eavesdropping on them. The next day, they reach the village they had received their quest on, but it was just full of ruins. A traveler passes by and recognizes them as heroes. They ask him what happened to the village, but the traveler tells them that the village there has always been deserted and in ruins. Yotsuya guesses that time may pass by differently between this world and theirs. Kusue remembers the little boy he saved and hopes that he's alive somewhere. They next ask the traveler if he knows the place Radadorbo, the destination of their quest. Thankfully, the traveler does know where it is, but it's on the other side of the continent. With horses, they can reach it in a month, but on foot, it would take them up to 3 months. Shindo begs the traveler to let them borrow his horse, but the traveler tells them he needs it for his work. Instead, he suggests that they can try the martial arts tournament coming up in a nearby town, since the reward for winning it is a couple of horses. The group decides to level up first before entering the tournament. They head to the nearby forest and Yotsuya stops them when he hears some enemies nearby. To their surprise, it wasn't goblins, but a group of bandits who came out of the bushes. Yotsuya was able to injure one of the bandits, but the game master suddenly speaks in his head and reduces his experience. It turns out that they will get penalties if they attack other humans. He informs the others of the penalty, and they all run away instead of fighting. Shindo attacks the bandits with wind magic to give the others time to escape. Unfortunately, when the others stop to rest from running, they learn that Shindo was left behind and captured. Yotsuya wonders what they should do. Should they rescue her and risk losing more time, or should they just leave her and finish their quest before their deadline is up? The girls protest about his callous disregard for Shindo, but Yotsuya clarifies that he's saving her by finishing their quest. Kusue tells Yotsuya that saving someone's life isn't all there is to saving them. Yotsuya compromises by suggesting that they split up. The girls go rescue Shindo while he enters the tournament. Yuka rants about her frustration with Yotsuya's attitude and promises Kusue that they'll rescue Shindo. Unfortunately, they also get captured by the bandits. Yotsuya can see the situation on his map and realizes that he's all alone again. He goes to kill more goblins and levels up, securing his next job as a creature wizard. As a creature wizard, he can speed up cellular growth, as well as persuade creatures using his words. At the town, Yotsuya enters his first round of tournament, but he instantly gets killed by his opponent, the knight Kavel. He gets revived and Kavel walks up to him and thanks him for reviving. She got worried that she might have killed someone. Yotsuya asks her if he can borrow her horses, but when Kavel doesn't agree, he instead offers to work for her for the horses. Kavel accepts, but she tells him that they would need to defeat a strong creature like a troll for it to be worth the horses. Yotsuya smiles and asks her if a group of bandits would suffice. After reporting the bandits' location to the knight commander, Kavel offers to train Yotsuya up since she noticed in their duel that he doesn't know how to use a sword. Throughout the afternoon, Yotsuya gets beaten up by Kavel, and Yotsuya remembers how bad he is at sports. At dawn, Kavel leads the contingent of knights to the bandits' hideout. The girls also notice Yotsuya approaching them using their maps. The knights quietly kill the bandit scouts and start a full charge after they get discovered. When they notice that they are about to be defeated, the bandits open a cage, and they all run away. Yotsuya and Kavel prepare to face what may come out of the gate. A huge human walks out and gives out a loud cry, and Kavel identifies it as a berserker, a bandit that became crazy and powerful after eating flesh imbued with magic. With each swipe of the berserker's sword, the knights get blasted away. Kavel faces the berserker, but one swipe of its sword easily destroys her shield. She draws her great sword, Roy Kayeksa, the great sword of annihilation. Kavel shouts that she loves cutting up flesh and charges the berserker. Yotsuya gets weirded out by Kavel's personality while she fights the berserker. The berserker then manages to disarm Kavel and sends her sword flying away. Yotsuya jumps in to save Kavel from being sliced up, but the block broke his fingers and knife. He then remembers his new powers as a creature wizard and uses his persuasion power to confuse the enemy. He then stabs the berserker in the back, but the berserker kills him. Thankfully, Kavel swings her great sword and decapitates the berserker. The knights then break into the prison and kill the bandits guarding the girls. After rescuing the girls, Yotsuya apologizes for losing the tournament. They are discussing how they might continue their travels when Kavel happily tells them that she might be able to help. The next day, Yotsuya, the girls, Kavel, and some knights are preparing for their journey to Radadorbo. Kavel volunteered to guard them in exchange for letting her train them. After all, she can cut the heroes up since they'll just revive. In the past, Kusue had always hated PE class. She never got to join games because of her ill health, so she always got low grades in class. Her grade was already dictated just based on her status. That is why she decided to create a drug to cure her and her mom. She promised her parents to study hard and earn scholarships for pharmaceutical school. But now she is imprisoned and the bandits are eyeing them creepily. Thankfully, they were able to fight back. She also witnessed the death of the bandits right in front of her. The violence and actions that were meaningless to her before is now the vital skill she needs to survive in this world. In this new world where knights loot the dead and they have to always be active, she doesn't know who she is anymore. On their journey to Radadorbo, Yotsuya cooks them dinner every time they rest. Kusue still cannot eat since the sight of the dead bandits is always on her mind. She confides to Shindo that she wants to be the one protecting them and stop holding everyone back. Just like Yotsuya, who even now is increasing his rank by cooking food for everyone. Kavil then arrives and asks them to train with her. She first spars with Yuka and then Kusue, tiring her out until she drops. A few knights arrive and report that they have been attacked by goblins while gathering firewood. Yotsuya heals them while Kusue skulks and thinks about how she needs to train more to protect them all. She gives her all-in training with Kavil the next few days, but she still cannot lift her longsword. While they find another group of goblins, Yotsuya volunteers themselves to exterminate them so they can earn some experience points. Yotsuya, Shindo, and Yuka handily fight the goblins while Kusue is still shaking in terror. A goblin up in a tree jumps at Kusue and she raises her sword to impale it. She cries and apologizes to the goblin as it dies. That night, Shindo congratulates Kusue for killing a goblin, but all Kusue can think of is the feeling of the goblin's flesh getting sliced. Kavil herself extols the feeling of cutting up flesh, which again surprises the group. She then leaves to find more goblins to kill. It turns out that when Kavil was a child, she watched her father train, and one of his teachings, the real combat, provided more experience. Really stuck in her mind. Kusue remembers her promise to be a pharmacist and realizes that she has to protect everyone so they can return alive. During their journey, their wagons get stuck in a crack in the ground. Yotsuya, a knight named Bimsberg, and a squire all help in raising and pushing the wagon to get it unstuck. They continue on their journey until they see another wagon getting attacked in the distance. Kavil can see some soldiers, civilians, and even a child surrounded by monsters. Kusue immediately declares that they have to help them, but Yotsuya reminds her that they're on a very tight deadline. She angrily looks at him and tells them that she'll save them even if she has to do it alone. She reminds Yotsuya what she said before, that saving someone's life isn't all there is to saving them. If she lets a child be in danger, then there's no point in her life anymore. Yotsuya smiles and tells the others that it might be an event by the game master. He suggests that they split up. The others continue on their journey while he and Kusue go rescue the other wagon. Yotsuya and Kusue charge towards the monsters, and Yotsuya identifies the enemies as kobolds, a pretty strong type of enemy. He shouts at the soldiers being attacked that they'll distract the kobolds. Yotsuya uses his pan and his knife, while Kusue uses a shield and a sword to fight the kobolds. Kusue quickly gets killed by a kobold, while Yotsuya is also getting pushed back. He tries to use his persuasion power to talk to them, but they can't understand human speech. He jams his finger in the kobold's eye, but he also gets overwhelmed and killed. Thankfully, the soldiers finally attack and kill the distracted kobolds. When Kusue gets revived, she calmly faces the kobold attacking her and summons her longsword the moment it jumps on her, letting it get impaled on her sword. Yotsuya is amazed at her tactics, and he baits the last remaining kobold to chase him. He then leads the kobold to their wagon, where Kavil jumps out and slices the kobold. After the battle, Yotsuya heals the injured while absorbing some magic from the kobold's blood to replenish their MP, a tactic he learned from the Berserker. The soldiers thank them for their assistance and introduce themselves as soldiers from the kingdom of Daok. They are transporting the civilians to Radadorbo. The civilians are criminals who violated the ban on a foreign religion known as Arturos. They plan to execute the civilians and the child at Radadorbo to warn other Arturos followers. The group is shocked since Radadorbo really came up. They get worried and wonder if the people about to be executed are the goods they are meant to deliver. Yotsuya remembers how he got a penalty for hurting humans. So, will they finish the quest if they deliver the heretics? Or would it fail since they caused them to get killed? Kavil protests and points out that Radadorbo is not under the kingdom of Daok's authority. Therefore, they don't have the right to execute citizens on foreign ground. The soldier angrily asks who she is and mocks her when she learns that she's from Cortinel, a tiny nation with no value. Camilto, the soldier, and Cavil get so angry at each other that they draw out their weapons. Cavil states that the Deoc kingdom is a dictatorship looking to conquer the whole continent, while Camilto gets angry and defends his nation. Thankfully, Shindo interferes and stops them. Later, the heroes talk about what they should do. Yotsuya shares his theory that this might be the quest they need to do. Yuka suggests that maybe they can deliver the citizens to Radadorbo, but stop their execution. That way, they accomplish the delivery and stopped humans from dying. The others agree with her decision. They continue their journey together since Camilto also doesn't have a choice but to rely on their protection. Moreover, they cannot allow the citizens to die until they get executed. Meanwhile, Yotsuya is inside the wagon, continuing to heal the child. He needs to gather more information so they can decide what they need to do. As the sun sets, Camilto stops the caravan and tells them to rest. Later that night, Yotsuya and the others speak with the citizens to know their side of the story. The citizen tells them that the kingdom of Deoc is divided between the citizens who worship only the king and the citizens who worship both God and the king. Both sides continued their hostilities, insisting that the other side started it, which led to prolonged conflict where each side destroyed everything the other believed in. Unfortunately, the kingdom's statues were destroyed in the conflict, so the king prohibited the religion and executed its believers. The citizen is sad because in peaceful times their God advocates love and peace. But some of his fellow believers failed to comprehend this and instead divided the kingdom into two. After hearing his story, Yotsuya decides that they next have to learn Camilto's side of things. They talk to him by the campfire and Camilto explains that they need to kill the heretics in Radadorbo to set an example. The Arturos religion comes from outside the continent, and since Radadorbo's port is the gateway to this continent, they must be halted there. He tells them that it's vitally important to dampen their morale as soon as they set foot on the continent, preventing the heretics from propagating further. Yotsuya asks him if they really need to go that far, so Camilto shares an event from his childhood. He was just a child waiting for his father to come home, but when he did, he was without a leg and an arm. The fate of the war orphans and families whose men could no longer work was already set in stone. Thankfully, their current king, Deoc V, changed that history. He rewarded all those who fought in the war and lost families with one slave each. He intends to establish more colonies outside the kingdom to improve the citizens' lives. Thus, Camilto happily served his king since his family was spared from homelessness. He tells the heroes that their king never abandoned the weak and just desires the unification of the continent for the good of the people. The heroes are quietly contemplating what he said, thinking of the Earth's brutal past of imperialism. Yuka can't hold it in anymore and speaks up, telling Camilto that dictatorships are bad. They are just like bullies trying to assert dominance over others. The kingdom of Deoc is a big nation attacking smaller ones, and once they capture the smaller country, their citizens are made into slaves. Camilto is getting angry with her accusations and picks up his axe. Thankfully, Shindo and Yotsuya break up the two, and Yotsuya tells Camilto that they should just have their own opinions. A few days later, Shindo and Cavil are sparring. Cavil tells her that since they don't have the strength of men, they should make up for it with the sword techniques and knowing where to attack. Later, Camilto and Yotsuya are surveying the land they have to go through. Cavil asks if their carriages can cross the mountains ahead, but Camilto tells them he knows of an alternate route. Yotsuya and Knight Bimsberg push the carriage up the mountain until they reach the alternate route. They can see a man-made structure poking out of the mountains and a tunnel going through. As they enter the tunnel, Camilto explains that the mechanisms throughout the cave were built thousands of years ago, but he assures them that the ones at their route are still functional. They enter a large chamber where falling water activates the bridge they have to go through. While they are watching the spectacle in amazement, the cave behind them suddenly closes up, and Camilto's group escapes from a side passage. He apologizes and explains that he cannot travel with people who sympathize with the followers of an evil religion. After they leave, Cavil tells the others that they have no choice but to go on ahead to the mysterious structure. If they hurry, they might be able to catch up with Camilto and kill him. After they cross the bridge, the next passageway is filled with large swinging hammers. Yotsuya notices some strange markings above the doorway and runs to investigate. There he sees 3 pillars and starts rotating them to match the markings. After successfully matching them, the swinging hammers stop and they safely pass. Afterward, another seemingly normal corridor is in front of them. Yotsuya walks through it, but the wall immediately slams into him and sends him down a chasm. After he revives, he shouts out to the others to continue ahead without him while he tries to climb out of the chasm. The girls start watching the movements of the walls and try to predict their precise pattern for them to pass through unscathed. Kusue asks for some pen and paper, and after writing down the movements of the wall, she determines the best time to move forward. To test Kusue's theory, Shindo volunteers to go ahead first alone. When she successfully gets past, she signals the others to continue and yells downward at Yotsuya that they will go on ahead. Meanwhile, Yotsuya below starts making footholds by cutting the walls with his knife. Kavel and the girls finally exit the corridors, but they find themselves having to cross another bridge. On the opposite side of the bridge, some red fluid pumps into a gargoyle, reviving it. The gargoyle jumps down to the ground and faces the group. With the footholds he created, Yotsuya was able to inch his way up the walls. Unfortunately, he falls and dies. He continues again after he revives, but his torch slowly dies. He continues working in the dark as memories of his lonely life flash back to him. He was alone at school, and he even chose to be alone now. With perseverance, Yotsuya finally climbs to the top and escapes the chasm. Yotsuya feels his way down the dark corridor in the hopes of catching up to the others. He stumbles near a glowing log point and is surprised about what it contains. The log point shows him memories of the others crying in the corridor. Kavel is saying farewell to their dead comrade, Knight Bimsberg. She promises to get vengeance for his death. Yotsuya feels around until he finds the body of Bimsberg. Memories of their journey together surfaced in his mind. They shared meals and pushed wagons together. He didn't know him for long, but he was only there because of their quest to go to Radadorbo. He thanks him for his service and goes on his way. Meanwhile, the gargoyle is menacingly advancing toward the group. Kavel and the girls are killing all the vampire bats attacking them. Kavel and Shindo advance and meet the gargoyle in the middle of the bridge. Shindo notices that a key is hanging from the gargoyle's arm and deduces they have to acquire it to continue on their journey. Kavel charges in to fight the gargoyle while Shindo handles the vampire bats around them. Kavel compliments Shindo's talent, so Shindo shares that she used to do sports. Kavel asks her why she stopped, which makes Shindo remember her last tennis tournament. She lost in her first round, and she suspects it's because of her low physical strength as a wizard. It seems that the stats of the other world carried over into the real world. Nevertheless, she smiles and promises Kavel that she'll continue playing. However, Kavel is busy getting stabbed in the chest by the gargoyle. Kavel drops her long sword and falls down into the waters below. The gargoyle slowly turns around and looks at the defenseless Shindo. Shindo shakes in fear and steps back, accidentally stepping on a vampire bat. She closes her eyes and waits for the gargoyle to kill her, but time miraculously stops. She instantly remembers how Yotsuya told them before how time stopped for him when he reached rank 10 and got a new job. And just as she predicted, the game master shows up and spins the wheel. Shindo laments that she leveled up too late. A few seconds earlier would have let her save Kavel. When the time resumes, she immediately dashes forward, now in the garb of a warrior. Shindo slashes at the gargoyle's torso, but her sword just bounces off its armor. The gargoyle swipes at her, breaking her arm, and sends her off to the side. She almost falls off the bridge, but thankfully she manages to hold on at the last minute. She pulls herself up and the gargoyle attacks her again. After dodging, she pulls out her sword again with her broken arm fully healed up. The vampire bats start pulling her hair, so she equips her wizard hat to ward them off. She then equips her shield and faces the enemy once more. She notices that the gargoyle is bleeding from a stomach wound, an earlier attack by Kavel. She then remembers how Kavel taught her that there are specific parts of an enemy you attack. You can stab the enemy's heart either from the neck or below the ribs. Shindo visualizes the gargoyle's heart and rushes in again. She deflects it at its first attack, but the second attack cuts off her sword arm. She blocks the next attack and somersaults her way into its head, catches her chopped sword arm and stabs it right at the gargoyle's neck. Meanwhile, Yotsuya is running toward the others using the map as his guide. He questions what his purpose in life is. He remembers his childhood friends and the stories his teammates shared with him. Why was he chosen as a player? Considering their lineup, he suspects that he might be the leader. When he finally reaches the outside, he's just in time to see Shindo defeat the gargoyle. The squire worriedly points at the river below, and Yotsuya sees Kaval's sword at the bridge's edge. He immediately runs and dives into the pool. A few hours later, Kaval wakes up inside a wagon. The wound on her stomach is now just an ugly scar, and the squire beside her tells her that Yotsuya healed her. Yotsuya even absorbed the blood of the monsters from the cave to replenish his MP in the hopes of healing her. Now, Yotsuya is unconsciously lying down on the side of the wagon, drained from all his efforts. The squire exits, leaving Kaval alone with Yotsuya. Kaval closes Yotsuya's eyes and lightly kisses him on the lips as thanks. She didn't notice that the other girls were looking at her. She blushes hard and asks them to keep it a secret. Later, she tells them that Yotsuya kind of reminded her about herself. They're both struggling against life. She then shares the story of how she became a knight. She ranked 70th out of 3,000, but her father ranked 2nd, while her brothers also ranked in the top 20s. Later that night, Yotsuya wakes up from his sleep shouting that he figured out something. The girls came near to him and Yotsuya explains what he found out. The past quests weren't clear as to what village they should help or which goblin they have to defeat. They could have helped any village or defeated any goblins, meaning on this quest it might be that they can deliver any goods too. Thus, Yotsuya suggests they split up. Since they are now still determining what goods they have to deliver, Yotsuya suggests that one group follows the Deok soldiers and saves the prisoners, while another group looks for a different cargo bound for Radodorbo. The two groups will be Team A, composed of Kusuye, Shindo, and the Squire, who will search for the cargo, while Team B is composed of Kaval, Yotsuya, and Yuka, who will follow the Deok soldiers. Team A follows the main road to Radodorbo, hoping to find a settlement or a traveling merchant they can escort. Meanwhile, Team B is left behind to plan out their attack on the Deok soldiers. They have the element of surprise since the Deok soldiers would think they died in the cave, but Kaval worries that they might start a war. Before they entered the cave, Kaval saw Camilto send a message by bird back to his homeland to report on their progress. If the Deok kingdom is aware of the feud between Camilto and Kaval, then it might start a war if they kill him. Since Deok kingdom is much larger than Cortanel, Kaval's kingdom would surely be defeated. Thus, their first order of business is to find a way to get Camilto to write a letter saying Cortanel is not the enemy. Yotsuya knows that the Deok kingdom might just declare war anyway, but he wants to hurt them as much as they hurt them. And with this, Yotsuya has an evil plan. The next morning, they catch up to the Deok soldiers and watch them. Later that night, they go through their plan again, and Yuka comments that Yotsuya's plan makes him look like the villain. Yotsuya shares that he played a lot of RPG games, so he's used to thinking about how to kill enemies. Yuka, meanwhile, shares that she just plays dating games, and then asks Yotsuya if she believes he's in a virtual world. Like, for example, if a girl kisses him, would that count as his first kiss? Yotsuya thinks she's planning to kiss someone, and he tells her that it's the experience that counts, so it doesn't matter if it's virtual or not. Later, Camilto is debriefing his men about their mission when Yotsuya suddenly shows up. They are surprised that he's still alive, and they immediately draw their swords. Yotsuya stops them and tells them that he just wants to negotiate. Heroes don't die, so Camilto knows he can't beat them. Yotsuya then explains that from their expedition, everyone died, while 2 of the heroes fell into a hole. The only ones left are him and Yuka, who he calls from the shadows. Yuka then reveals that Yotsuya converted to the religion of Arturos. Yotsuya threatens that if they don't release his fellow Arturos followers, he would use his immortality to spread the Arturos religion all over the world. He gives them until sunrise to decide. Later, Camilto is talking to his fellow soldiers about what they should do. If Yotsuya spreads the Arturos religion, then their journey would have all been for naught. They then remember how Yotsuya told them how 2 heroes fell in a hole, so they know that they can stop Yotsuya even if they can't kill him. They're planning to capture him when, out of nowhere, Yuka speaks up and encourages them to do so. She tells them that she's super annoyed with Yotsuya, so she wants him gone too. The Deok soldiers don't trust her, however, so she volunteers to lead them back to the sleeping Yotsuya. Camilto and another soldier follow Yuka while the last soldier is left guarding the prisoners. Kamilto still doesn't trust Yuka, so they stab her in the back. They then look for Yotsuya at their supposed camp, but he wasn't there. They lead Yuka back to their wagon to find Yotsuya there, with blood dripping from his sword. He has killed the prisoners and the guard. Yuka then tells them that everything was a lie and they just wanted revenge for their fallen comrades. Yotsuya lights on fire the last remaining prisoner and sends their horse and wagon running away. Yuka escapes from Kamilto and together with Yotsuya flees, with the Daok soldier running after them. Yuka worries that they might check the bodies left behind. The real plan was after Yuka leads Kamilto and the knight away, Yotsuya sneaks into their camp and knocks the last soldier unconscious. Afterward, he rescues the prisoners and forces the captured soldier on the prisoner's clothes. The one he burned was the tied-up soldier. Now, Kamilto will write home that the knights from Courtanel are dead, and the heroes are the ones who disrupted their mission. Meanwhile, Shindo and the others in Team A are worrying about how they cannot find any cargo they can deliver. It has been 3 days and they only have 4 days left. Shindo hopes the other team's mission is going okay. Yotsuya and Yuka finally reach the place where they hid the rescued citizens, a cave hidden in a cliff. The citizens thank them and the kid warmly expresses his gratitude to Yuka. Yuka blushes at the kid's compliment and tells herself that she's not interested in kids. In a flashback, Yotsuya is shown explaining his plan to Kavel and Yuka. He used cloth sacks and unused clothing to create dummies, and told them that they'll add 1 living soldier to complete the ruse. Yuka asks Yotsuya that his plan would involve killing a human being, and if he is ready for that. However, the fact that they can summon weapons out of thin air makes Yotsuya believe that they're not in the real world. Back in the present, Yuka confides in Yotsuya again if it's worth killing someone just to stop a war in a virtual world. Yotsuya, however, reminds her that they need to avenge their friends who died. She asks him what they are to him, so Yotsuya tells her that he considers them fellow survivors. Kinda like how they are all passengers in a falling bus. Nevertheless, they can't afford to worry themselves over the lives of characters in a game. In the past, Kamilto was happy when their king entrusted him with a very important mission. But back in the present, they managed to find their wagon, but the horse is already dead. He punches the ground in anger at Yotsuya and sends a new message back to their kingdom to report their failed mission and the betrayal of their heroes. He looks back at his fellow soldiers and to his horror, his throat is being slit by Kavel. Kamilto remembers Yuka's words and realizes that they have been lied to the whole time. Kavel lets him get his axe from the wagon and the two fight. However, Kavel easily cuts off his arms and then his legs. She then calmly pulls out her great sword and asks Kamilto for his last words. Kamilto cries and remembers the face of his king just before Kavel cuts his head off. In the kingdom of Daok, the king receives the news of Kamilto's failed expedition. His subordinate asks the king if they should send reinforcements, but the king remarks that there are only 2 survivors, so it would be a waste. The more pressing concern is that the heroes who should be neutral to humanity have become their kingdom's enemies. Thus, the king orders his subordinate to research ways on how to kill the heroes. Meanwhile, Yotsuya, Yuka, and Kavel are talking about their successful mission. They don't know what Kamilto sent in his report, but they have done all they can do. As for the goods, Yotsuya has 3 ideas he wants to try. In another part of the map, Shindo and the others have finally reached a settlement. They ask the sole merchant they see, but he sadly doesn't have any deliveries going to Radadorbo. Thankfully, Kusue also has another idea. Yotsuya and Team B pack a couple of boxes into the wagon. Yuka is apprehensive about the box's contents, but Yotsuya assures her that they might need them. The kid asks if they need help, and Yuka gets giddy with his cuteness. They are about to go when Yotsuya offers his seat on the horse to Yuka. Kavel, who was sitting in the other horse, cries out in shock, but she quickly becomes quiet when they look at her. During their journey, Yotsuya and the kid happily talk about their adventure, while Kavel sadly looks at them and sighs. Yuka notices this and starts wondering why. She then remembers how Kavel kissed Yotsuya before and giggles. Maybe Kavel is sad that Yotsuya didn't get to sit beside her. On one of their breaks, Kavel shyly tries to talk to Yotsuya again, but she clams up when she notices that the kid is nearby. Yuka was eavesdropping on them, happy that her hunch was correct. Later, Yuka remembers the dating game she played where she helped someone hesitating to confess. She decides to do the same to Kavel and help her show her true feelings to Yotsuya. On their next stop, Yuka offers to exchange seats with Yotsuya, telling him that her butt hurts after sitting on the horse for so long. Thus, on the next leg of their journey, Yuka is sitting on the wagon while the rescued prisoners ride the horses. That leaves Yotsuya and Kavel alone inside the wagon. Yuka's imagination runs wild thinking of the dating games she played. But when she peeks inside the wagon, she just sees the two sleeping. Yuka commences her next plan on their next break. She remembers in her games how sharing a task can help two people confess their feelings. Therefore, she hopes to let Kavel help Yotsuya with his cooking. She gets surprised when Kavel is well ahead of her by bringing home a large boar she killed. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to be a romantic incident, which leaves Yuka disappointed. After eating, Yuka decides to just force the two to spend some time together. She goes to Kavel and tells her that it's time to train Yotsuya. As the two start sparring, Yuka's thoughts once again wander to the lovey-dovey scenes in her games. Unfortunately, her dreams come crashing down when Kavel ends her training session and tells Yuka it's her turn. Later, Yuka is disappointingly sitting back on the horse and complaining while Yotsuya wonders what's wrong with her. Meanwhile, Team A is pursuing Kusue's idea. She surmises that there must be delivery companies that transport cargo in this world, so they just need to wait on the road for one of those and escort it to Radadorbo. They hail the passing merchant and offer to escort him to Radadorbo. The current guard of the wagon, however, complains that they're taking away his job. He challenges Shindo to a duel, but he gets hopelessly defeated. That night, Yuka sadly laments that she wasn't able to help Kavel express her feelings. She's about to go to sleep when she hears Kavel finally talk to Yotsuya. Kavel blushes and tells Yotsuya that she has something she wants to say to him. She shyly smiles and expresses her thanks for his help in avenging Bimsburg. She found it hard to find the time to thank him all day long, and now she feels better. Kavel goes to sleep while Yuka, who was eavesdropping again, is disappointed that she misread the whole situation. The next morning, Team A helps the merchant they met with his cargo, and the previous guard is now thankful for their help. Meanwhile, Team B is also making good progress towards Radadorbo. Yotsuya explains to Yuka their plan upon reaching Radadorbo. They have prepared 3 different cargoes. The first is the 3 condemned convicts, who they will deliver to a church where they'll be kept safe. However, upon doing so, their quest didn't get completed. They go to their next delivery, the personal effects of the Dead Kingdom soldiers. If they can sell them, they might be counted as goods. Sadly, this also didn't complete the quest. Finally, they head to deliver their 3rd cargo, the suspicious-looking boxes. Meanwhile, Team A is also close to successfully guarding the merchant to Radadorbo. They wonder if they could complete the quest when they suddenly get notified that it's already completed. Team B's 3rd cargo did the job. They delivered the boxes containing the heads of the dead soldiers to the authorities and repeated the atrocities they committed. Kavel also tells the authorities that if they need more proof, they can go to church where the victims are staying. The guard thanks them for their service and tells them that there's no need to bring the heads in the future. Yotsuya and the others just worryingly laugh. Later, Yuka still can't believe that the soldiers' heads would be the ones to clear the quest. Yotsuya tells her that it was probably just all up to how the game master felt. Team A then meets up with them, and they now only have one more quest to do: explore more of the map to reach 5%. They only have a day and a half left, so the girls synchronously suggest that they should split up and head in different locations. The heroes each go their own way, walking away from Radadorbo to cover more ground. Yotsuya can see the city from the mountain he's in, and check the map to see how the others are doing. They have traversed 4.96%, close to the required 5%. Yotsuya then notices that it's starting to snow. The snow is falling all over the region, and Kavel watches the weather from a tavern in the city. Her squire hands her a flagon of beer and tells her that the locals are expecting a blizzard tonight. Meanwhile, Kavel reminisces about the conversation she had with Yotsuya earlier that day. The two watch the sunset as Kavel says her farewell to Yotsuya. They shake hands, and Kavel is about to say something, but Yotsuya is already leaving. Back in the present, Kavel longingly stares at her sword and remembers all the moments of their adventure together. She tells herself that she is a knight and that the kiss she shared with Yotsuya was just a woman's fancy. In the mountains, Yotsuya is having a hard time with the blizzard. He browses his inventory and combines all his clothes to ward off the cold. He continues walking, but he still finds it difficult to face the cold wind. Not only that, it's starting to get dark too. He realizes that he might die there. And since Shindo and the others didn't revive when the troll ate them, that means they can't revive if they are not in the environment where they could survive. If he dies in the cold, then his body would revive out there in the mountains. He decides to do some knee lifts while walking to raise his body's temperature. Yuka is also having a hard time with the blizzard since she only has her wizard cloak to wrap herself in. She loudly shouts that if there's going to be an event, then there should be some hot guys to keep her company. She imagines herself wrapped around his Prince Charming watching the snowfall. She checks the map and sees the others still moving, so she trudges on ahead in the snow. Kusue is using her shield to protect herself from the snow, but the bare metal armor of a warrior isn't doing her much good. The wind pushes her around, but she determinedly continues walking. She doesn't want to be a burden anymore. She was thankful for her new healthy body. Not only that, she has friends here that rely on her. Shindo is also walking in the blistering cold, only wearing her wizard robes. She passes by a fallen statue, and she shields her face from the cold wind with her hat. She realizes that she's now alone. The last time she was alone was when she needed to do the first quest on her own. Everything she had worked hard for, the relationships she built, were instantly taken from her. She thought that as long as she was surrounded by her friends, she wouldn't end up like Sayuri. She continues walking when she sees a snowy stone ahead. Kusue is finding it hard to continue anymore, and she checks her map to see the other statuses. She gets elated to see that they're making progress. She tries to continue walking, but her vision slowly fades away, and she falls to the snow. She tries to get back up, but her body won't listen to her anymore. Shindo wipes off the snow on the stone and is surprised to see that it's the very same statue she passed by earlier. She had just been going in circles. She falls to her knees in frustration and screams at the sky. Meanwhile, Yotsuya is also about to give up. They have all been walking for a couple of hours. He checks the map and sees that most of them have stopped moving in the blizzard. Moreover, they still need around 10 kilometers to clear the quest. He continues walking, regretting the knee lifts he did earlier, which sapped away his strength. The girls are now succumbing to the cold, so he has to continue. He thinks about digging out a shelter and waiting for the storm to pass, but he's not sure if they have enough time. Yotsuya then hears a roar behind him, and when he looks back, a large yeti is standing menacingly looking at him. The yeti attacks him and injures him in the back. Thankfully, he dodges the next strikes and takes out his knife. He also uses a pen to block the yeti's blow. Later, he finally defeats and kills the yeti. He notices that the monster is just skin and bones, which might have forced it to look for food. Not only that, small baby yetis come out of the snow and huddle near the dead yeti. Yotsuya wonders what he should do. The baby yetis would die if left out in the cold. He remembers that he doesn't have enough time and walks away. He continues on his trek, and the only thing going through his mind is the thought of his teammates. He doesn't want any of them to die. He defyingly shouts at the sky that he won't die, but the snow underneath his feet suddenly gives out and he falls into the darkness below. Under a stormy sky, Majiha Pink and Majiha Purple face their greatest enemy. The Demon King fires a bolt of lightning at Majiha Purple and captures her in a sphere of magic. The Demon King laughs and tells Majiha Pink to surrender to his might, but Majiha Pink stands back up. She tells the Demon King that they will never give up, and a pink aura starts enveloping her. Majiha Purple smiles as she sees her sister not give up, and lends her magic power. Combining their magic, Majiha Pink evolves and a pair of glowing magic wings sprouts behind her. With her more powerful form, she fires her wand at the Demon King, banishing him from the world. This was the series Yuka loved watching as a child. She even has her own wand since the Majiha sisters were her role models. She copied everything they do as she wishes to be a magical girl and save the world. But now, she can't even light her staff. She's just hiding underneath a makeshift shelter to escape the cold. She recognizes her limitations and that she just hangs out with her classmates who are much stronger than her. She talked trash behind their backs, but then used Yotsuya to be friends with them again. As Yuka loses hope, her staff slowly fades away. Meanwhile, in a hole in the ground, Yotsuya wakes up to find himself in an ancient dungeon. He died, but thanks to the shelter of the dungeon, his body was able to revive. The walls of the ancient dungeon glow faintly, and Yotsuya decides to follow it. He sees a couple of skeletons in the corridor, but he keeps walking until he reaches a juncture in the corridor. He checks his map and sees that he's still making progress. Kusue's spirit tries to wake up her dead body, but she sadly cannot revive due to the harsh environment she's in. Shindo wakes up from her nap and sees the notification stating Kusue is now dead. She resumes her trek across the mountainside as the wind slowly dies down. After a while, she notices the twinkling lights of a village in the distance. She quickly walks toward it in the hopes of borrowing some sled or sleigh to speed up her travel. She doesn't notice that she's now stepping over a frozen lake with icy cold water underneath. She finally hears the cracks echoing in the wind as cracks spread underneath her and send her tumbling down in the waters below. Her death notifies Yotsuya, who was carefully watching the map. He noticed that she was moving earlier, but her dying dampens his spirit. More so, he just ran into a dead end. He goes back to the corridor and looks for another way, but all that he finds are dead ends. He even crawls in a tight tunnel, but still finds himself lost. The ground suddenly shakes beneath his feet, and a large earthworm-type creature bursts out of the earth. The creature simply looks around and burrows down to the earth again. Yotsuya decides to follow the creature as it makes tunnels under the ground. It periodically excretes glowing green poop that he has to shove aside to continue his crawling. Thankfully, the worm is heading in a direction he hasn't been in yet, and it doesn't seem to be aggressive. The slow pace of the worm irritates Yotsuya, so he tries poking the end of the worm. It quickens its burrowing, which made Yotsuya glad. However, the tunnel begins to shake and the rocks behind him are falling. Another more aggressive worm abruptly bursts out of the tunnel and is charging straight at them. Yotsuya is now stuck, and he can only scream as the worm swallows him whole. The only one left walking is Yuka. Yotsuya's status suddenly shows up, declaring him dead too. Yuka falls to her knees and cannot believe that she's the only one left. She then smiles as she realizes that she now has an excuse to give up. After all, no one can complain if everyone else died before her. She watches the gently falling snow and curls up in the ground. She then hears someone talking to her. When she looks up, it is Majiha Purple, telling her she cannot give up. She tears up as she realizes that her dying wish is to meet them seems to be coming true. Majiha Purple, however, scolds her and asks her what Majiha Pink did when she was defeated by the Demon King. She stood up. She again asks what Majiha Pink did when she was defeated in the next season. She once again stood up. Even in the final season, she stood up. Majiha Purple asks Yuka what she saw when she was watching them all those years. The Mahija sisters all stood up. With that, Yuka summons her staff and pushes herself back up. With tears in her eyes, she casts a fire spell that illuminates her surroundings. Thus, Yuka continues walking with the vision of her favorite male character in her favorite video game, leading her on. She also happily imagines all the Majiha sisters beside her cheering. She happily continues walking, but she wobbles on her feet as her energy gets drained. She's about to faint when a stranger suddenly warns her not to sleep. It was a pretty lady astride a very large cat-like creature. The lady recognizes her as a player and offers her a ride. Yuka accepts her outstretched hand and they ride the large cat together. She tells the lady all about their mission, and the lady shows her surprised to learn that they're on the 4th stage already. The time clocks down to 3 minutes, and Yuka carries out that they won't be able to make it. Seeing her desperation, the lady pulls out her lance and asks the wind spirit, Sillyfeed, to lend her power. A white light shines from her spear, and the cat magically runs into the sky. Yuka is surprised at what the lady just did, and asks her if she's a player too. The lady, however, explains that she's just a simple magic user. The lady summons more wind, which speeds up their travel more. As the clock ticks down to just seconds, Yuka closes her eyes, hoping that they'll make it. Shindo, Kusue, and Yotsuya are surprised, and they look around to see who completed the quest. Yuka was about to brag when the game master suddenly shows up behind her and congratulates them for clearing the quest. As her reward, she asks Yuka what her question would be. Yuka thinks hard about what her question would be. Should she ask about the lady who helped her since she suspiciously saved them at the last minute? She looks at each of her teammates, and when she sees Yotsuya, she realizes what she has to ask. She faces the game master and asks her if this world is virtual reality or truly real. The game master casually explains to her the concepts of parallel worlds. For example, if one is at an intersection and chooses right, a new parallel world is born, where one chooses the left path instead. Every time people make a decision, the potential number of parallel worlds in the universe increases in a branching structure. Another example would be, what if the person dies in an accident? Well, there would be a parallel world where he doesn't die. If this happens to your parents, then there is a world where you wouldn't be born at all. With each iteration of these in history, parallel worlds become more and more unrealistic the farther they branch away from the original. And this repeats eternally since the birth of the universe. The game master and his peers can observe and travel between parallel worlds that exist on a similar wavelength. Currently, they are in a world that branched off 4.6 billion years ago, where a sentient race identical to humans came to exist and lived through a history similar to human history. It is Earth, but based on a different possibility. Yotsuya tries to ask what that means, but the game master tells him he doesn't have the right to ask questions. The game master then clarifies that they are not in a virtual reality, but instead a parallel world. Technically, the heroes are the only things in the world that are virtual. Thus, everything in this world, from the sky, the sea, the land, the creatures, and the humans, are all perfectly real beings. Yuka horrifically looks at Yotsuya, who is struggling with the fact that he killed real people with his own hands. After the game master's explanation, Yotsuya wakes up back in his room on Earth with his cell phone beside him. His vision shakes as he questions if he did kill real humans. He quickly runs into the balcony and thinks about what happened. Later that night, he's sweating on his bed, still thinking about it. He always wished people would die, but after finding out that he killed one, his heart wouldn't stop pounding. Like a roller coaster or skydiving, he feels like he can't stop anymore. A few days later, Yotsuya is back at school playing PE. He ignores his teammates and expertly shoots the basketball. His classmates are also surprised that he's good at basketball. Meanwhile, Kusue is also playing with Shindo. Kusue is glad that she's now able to participate in PE, and even Shindo feels lighter than she did before. She wonders if it might be because they leveled up a bunch of times. They also notice Yotsuya, but they haven't talked to him yet. Back when Game Master finished his explanation, Shindo and Kusue noticed Yotsuya's fallen expression, and they asked Yuka why. Yuka then explains what happened to their team on their mission to save the Arturo's followers, and that Yotsuya ended up killing a man. Not only that, she also texted them that he burned the man alive. Yotsuya just keeps playing basketball indifferently to the world. He then leaves the gymnasium and proceeds with his day. While going home, he's still thinking about the fact that he killed a man. To his surprise, he suddenly receives a new message from the game master. However, it wasn't a mission as he expected. Instead, it was asking him what his honest feelings are. He angrily goes home and wonders if him killing someone is part of the game master's plans. However, he was sure that he himself chose to do it because he only considered them NPCs in the first place. Yotsuya then notices a strange girl in his room. He freaks out, but the girl just asks him why he never replied to her email. He then remembers the game master's email and is shocked to find out that she was him. He then tells her about his feelings and that he was justified in killing them, since they are evil people in the first place. Nevertheless, he feels like killing the guy was a mistake, and if he had known the truth, he wouldn't have wanted to do it. After hearing his explanation, the game master invites him to meet the next player. Yotsuya asks her why she had him flirt with Yuka before when he recruited her, but she ignores his question. She gives him a hat to hide his face and they go to eat in a Chinese restaurant. Inside, she explains that one of the customers sitting there is a drug dealer. In 20 seconds, the new player will enter the restaurant and kill him. The player's name is Tori Keita, a 19-year-old male. With him is his 14-year-old brother, Shuji. Just as she predicted, 3 armed goons wearing masks and wielding bats suddenly enter the restaurant. Yotsuya can't recognize which one might be the next player, so he trips them when they try to run in to attack the man. He then explains to them that they shouldn't kill people. The man on the ground hits him with a bat, so he kicks him in the stomach. He then steals the enemy's bat and blocks the attack of another goon. After kicking one of them away, one of the guys shouts, "Shuji!" And Yotsuya realizes he must be the new player. He rips off the guy's mask and tells him that the drug dealer already ran away. As such, he and his brother should run before the police show up. Another gangster-looking guy walks in and asks Yotsuya if he's part of the drug dealer's group. When he denies it, the gangster points a gun at him and warns him not to lie. Yotsuya is panicking when the game master suddenly speaks up and offers him his wizard gauntlets. He immediately puts it on and rushes to attack the gangster. He uses his persuasion power to command him to stop, and the gangster cannot fire his gun. After defeating the gangster, he warns Keita again to leave with his brother. As Yotsuya is leaving, the gangster tries to shoot him in the back, but Keita kicks the gun out of the gangster's hands. He then kicks the man unconscious and leaves with his brother. Later, the game master tells Yotsuya that he stopped a murder today. She then asks him again what his honest feelings are. Yotsuya admits that he doesn't know anymore, but he does know what he has to do. He tells her that since he saved Keita and his brother, then their chances of finishing the quest go up. He also tells her that he now knows why she had him flirt with Yuka before. He stopped her photos from spreading, and she had a reason to return to the real world. This gave her the strength to complete their last quest. This time, he created a world where Keita and his brother weren't arrested, meaning Keita will also have something to fight for on their next quest. Game Master asks him what he learned about the value of life, but Yotsuya laughs and tells him it has no value. All humans ought to die. Meanwhile, the girls are back in their own lives. Shindo is out gossiping with her friends, Kusue is watching TV with her mom, and Yuka is back doing her live streaming. Game Master asks Yotsuya who he thinks he is to state that human life has no value, but he tells her he's just a normal kid with delusions of grandeur, and he would do anything to fight for his own justice.